Welcome to Cthulhu Flashdance Reviews. My name is Greg, and this is my review of Raise Your Goblets by Tim Page and Nick Miles, and released by Cool Mini or Not and Horrible Games. Raise Your Goblets is a game for 2 to 12 players who are basically trying to become the next successor to being king. And so each round you're basically trying to poison each other while keeping antidotes in your own cup and trying to kill off another family so that your family and yourself become the next succession for the king of a fictional kingdom of Otrivia. So we'll move on to the gameplay. In a game of Raise Your Goblets, it starts with all the players sitting around the table and all the goblets in the center of the table. Then each player will reach in with one hand, as long as it's arm length away, pick a goblet randomly, and then attach their colored coaster, which matches their family. This one is the black one. And they'll place it in the bottom of the goblet so that each goblet is color-coded. Then you would put the goblet pretty much within arm's length of yourself. There are 6 families in the game, and there are 6 goblets. If you're playing with more than 6 players, there are special rules for a different game mode called the wine taste mode, which I'll explain a little bit later. But the basic setup for the game is you get your goblet, plus you will get 2 black gems, which are poison tokens. You'll get 2 white antidote gems, and you will get 3 wine tokens, which are the red gems. So you put all those behind your screen so that the players don't see how many you have left. There is also a green and blue gem, which represent the unicorn antidote, the blue one, and the ogre poison, the green one. Those are special tokens that only really get used if you get a character, because every player is going to get a character out of the character deck, which has this on the back and the characters on the front. They will be getting a character each, which then have special abilities. Some of them have the ogre and the unicorn poison. Otherwise, they're not used in the game. And the second step that you need to do for setup is once everybody has their own goblets, the person who did the most recent toasting or who won the previous round, which I'll get to it a little bit, or sorry, not one, but called toast in the previous round, will then take 1 antidote token, 2 poison tokens, and enough wine for each goblet that's remaining. They will then shuffle as best they can the tokens and secretly place randomly 1 in each goblet without looking. This is a little tricky because you can accidentally see the tokens if you're not careful, but basically you would now be able to begin the game. So then what you do is you give each player a character card that, depending on which character card you get, you might get the, like I said before, the 2 tokens, the special ogre and unicorn antidotes, or you may have special abilities that apply at the beginning of each course, or at the end, or at any time. And so before the game begins, everybody who is a host at the beginning of course that they have a character action would then do those actions. And then once everybody is ready to go, starting with the player to the left of the host, you would begin the game round. The game is broken up into 3 courses. You have like the appetizer, the main course, and then dessert. And so what happens is during your turn, it goes around the table. Each player gets to do 2 actions. They can do no actions, they can pass, but you have the option to do up to 2 actions. So on your turn, if you do decide to take actions, you can peer into your cup. You pick up your cup and look in it, see what's in it. That's 1 action. You can pour, where you take a gem from behind your screen, like, for example, the wine gem, and you place it either in your cup or any cup that you want. There is the swap action, where you swap to the cup in front of you for any other cup, so you might do a swap. Now the blue cup belongs to me, and the black cup belongs to the blue player, or whatever player that goblet was in front of. You can also do a rotation, where you either do it clockwise or counterclockwise. So if you were to do rotate, you would rotate all the goblets by 1 player. So now all the contents are mixed again, and the final, you can also pass. So you can be like, I pass. Now, at any point on your first action, if you run out, if you've used up all your wine tokens, so you have no more behind your screen, I only have 2 antidotes and 2 poison, I can then declare a toast. Toast, everybody! And then what happens is, starting with the player on my left, it goes. Everyone gets one last action they can do, with the toaster going last. So at this point, someone could do a pour action, someone might do a swap action, someone might do a rotate, someone might pass, etc., etc. And then once everybody is done, you would then check: is there anybody have a character card that allows them to do something during the toast phase? And so, for example, there is a character who, when you are toasting, before you reveal what's in your cup, you get to look in the cup. If there's a poison token, you can remove the poison token, and then you drink effectively. When you drink your goblets, you would then pour them out, and you would see what is in your cup. If you have an antidote token and a poison token, they would cancel each other out. If you have more poison tokens than antidote tokens, so like here, for example, I have a wine and a poison, well, I was killed because my cup was poison. If you have no poisons, then you just have wine tokens. Wine tokens are used to see who gets the drunkest. By whoever has the most wine tokens will get a victory point. Also, at the beginning of the game, the host is going to pass out target cards. Target cards match different families that are playing the game. So if you're playing with less than 6 players, you would then just take the colors of the different families that you are currently playing in. So if we're playing with 2 players, and I have the black and yellow, I would just take black and yellow out, shuffle them, and then yellow and pass them around. Now, granted, with 2 players, it'll be pretty obvious who your target is, but there are special rules to do kind of a wine roulette thing where you have with 2 to 3 players to make it a little bit less of just like you versus like you putting poison in their cup, they're putting poison in your cup, to make it more interesting. So with 4 players, you would just take the 4 colors that are currently in the game. The nice thing about the target is that it also gets placed face up in front of your screen, so everybody knows which player you're targeting. This adds some pretty fun moments, lots of Princess Bride quotes. You know, I obviously can't trust the goblet in front of you, etc., etc. And you are constantly trying to remember what goblets are what and who put what in what. And so the best thing that you can do, that was one of the strategies the manual recommended, is just focus on which cup is safe and which cup is deadly. And that, like, basically which one is intended for your target. So, like, in one game, I was filling up my cup with poison because the person who was my target, I figured that they would think that I was putting, antidotes in my cup, and therefore they took the bait and they swapped cups, and they ended up getting poisoned. So, if you can kill off your target, you gain a victory point. If you survive, you gain a victory point. If you are the drunkest person, meaning you have the most wine gems in your cup, you get a victory point. And if you both survived and killed your target, you would also get a victory point. So you can get up to 4 victory points a turn. You can also win the game by being dead, because if you were the drunkest and you killed your target, that's 2 victory points, right? So just because you were eliminated that particular course doesn't mean that you're not going to get any victory points, except for there are some characters that have special conditions, like, for example, Cardinal Arsenic here, who says before drinking, you may remove 1 poison token from your goblet. If you do and are still poisoned, you score 0 victory points for this course. So that's an exception where one of the characters actually causes you to not gain any victory points if you are killed off. But the other characters, most of them pretty much, even if you get killed off, you will get victory points. At the end of the course, whoever you dish out your victory points, which are these little shield tokens, and then you collect all the target cards back up, shuffle them, pass them out again to everybody. Everybody gets their goblets back in front of them. You still pour in the random ones just like you did in the first round, where you have 1 antidote, 2 poison, and the rest are all wine tokens equal to the number of goblets. Randomly distribute them, pass out the target cards, and then you're ready to go. If anybody gets their own target card, so for example, if Yellow here were to get yellow, he would then pass the yellow one to the player on his left. that player, she would then take that card and look at it, and if that's her color, would then pass out to the player on their left. So eventually, you end up in a situation where everybody has a target that's not their own. I like that mechanic rather than reshuffling, as it does speed up that process a little bit. And so that's pretty much the game in a nutshell. And then the person who called the toast, whether they won or not, is then the Toastmaster for the next course. So they would then take the target cards, shuffle them, pass them out. They would then put the poison randomly and antidotes and wine into the goblets. And they would then make sure that everybody who had it before the course begins action, they take their actions, and then the player to that player's left would then go first. Another thing to note is that at the end of the courses, since you're emptying out your cups, they basically will get reset every course. So just because you start with a cup doesn't mean that's the cup you're going to end up with at the end of a course. Because of the swapping and the rotating, it gets pretty crazy after a little bit. On the back of the player mats, there are some references. So the references here in the center are the different actions that you can take, and it indicates that you can do it 2 times. At the bottom there is saying that you get a toast. Everyone gets one last action. Over here is kind of an explanation of victory points. An antidote kills a poison. Poison kills the player. You get 1 victory point for these. If you have both killed your target and survived, then you gain 1 extra victory point. And then this side is for the toast, the wine tasting, which is for more than 6 players. Another thing to note is you can only call, once again, I just want to reemphasize that you can only call toast if you have spent all of your wine tokens. So even if you have poison and antidote tokens behind your screen, as long as you don't have any red ones, you can call a toast. A lot of people may forget that, so just give them a friendly reminder that if someone calls toast, be like, hey, make sure you don't have any wine tokens, right? And then they'll be like, no, I don't. And it's like, okay, great. So then you move on to that final round. You also want to be careful, because since the advantage is you go last as a Toastmaster. So if you are, for example, your target calls toast, and you are swapping goblets as your last action, well, it's going to be that person's turn again. So that person's probably going to either swap or rotate after you. So you can use that to your advantage. You can bluff. You can be like, hey, I'm swapping the goblets, kind of like in Princess Bride, right? Like, I can't trust the goblet in front of you because you clearly are trying to poison me, but I can't trust the goblet in front of me because you just swapped them. So you swap them, and then that player has to decide, like, is it a bluff? Did they just swap their goblet, which is safe, and they're hoping that I swap back? Or did they actually put a poisonous goblet in front of me? So there are strategies to that. There's bluffing as well involved. There is some luck involved because of the random distribution of gems in the beginning, and things can get very confusing. If you're playing with more than 6 players, then you have wine tasters. Wine tasters sit next to another player. They play in teams. They become effectively wine taster and noble. The wine taster is either a loyal wine taster or a traitor. You will then pass out the wine taster cards. If on the back it has a scorpion, that means they're a traitor. If it has a flower, it would mean that they are a loyal member of the wine taster's family. So this does add another level to the game where you might have a traitor in your midst and you don't know it, or you may have someone who's actively trying to save you from drinking poison. So during the way the game changes slightly is both players get victory points potentially, and both players get character cards, and both players are one team. So when you do the actions phase, each one gets one action. The noble gets an action, and the wine taster gets an action. The wine taster can peek in a goblet. The noble cannot. So the noble will not know what's in their goblet, while the wine taster will be able to know, potentially. On your turn, if you want to call a toast, only the noble can call a toast. The wine taster cannot. And it has to be done before the wine taster does his action, because that effectively ends the round, and so it goes around in a circle again. Then when it comes back to you, your wine taster gets a free peek action if they want before you take your action as the noble. So this gives you a chance to see what exactly is in your goblet, not you personally, but your wine taster, and then they can suggest what to do, like, hey, swap, or, make sure you put an endo in there, and they could be lying. They could be trying to make it so that you poisoned yourself because they're the traitor. But they could also be they're most likely telling the truth. Now, the other advantage here is that, the other caveat here is that you have to have no wine icons behind your screen still to call it toast, but you have to call it before the wine taster goes. The wine taster does get a character card. They have it face down while the noble has his face up, just like in the regular game everyone will have their character cards face up, which I did forget to mention earlier. But if the noble allows the wine taster to use his special ability, the wine taster can. Otherwise, the wine taster does not get to use their character's ability. So this does add a little bit of a team dynamic, allowing more players to play, which is pretty cool, and a pretty cool aspect of the game that allows people to play the game even if with like a proverbial person preventing you from getting poisoned. Now, at the end, if you are not poisoned and the person who is your wine taster is a loyal person, they get to also victory points just like you do. If they were a traitor and you died, they gain 3 victory points and you get nothing. If they didn't kill you and they were the traitor, they get 0 victory points. At that point of the game, the noble becomes the wine taster for the player on their left, while the player their wine taster could then potentially become the noble with a new wine taster. So that's kind of neat idea that it goes kind of in a circle, so that way each player gets a chance to be a wine taster and each player gets a chance to be a noble at least once per game. In a 2 to 3 player variant of the game, you will not play with character cards and you will not play with coasters. Instead, what happens is you play with all 6 goblets. You can do any action you want except for rotate. When you swap, you swap goblets just like normal, and then when it's called the toast, the player to your left will then drink from a goblet of their choice. They will then pour out the contents. If they have survived, then the next player, they keep basically the wine and the antidotes in front of them, but then the next player empties their goblet of their choice. And if they survived, the same thing again. If they died, they are eliminated from the course, the next player goes. And you keep doing this until there is one surviving player or all 6 goblets have been emptied. And at that point, you see if there's any tiebreakers and etc. So that is Raise Your Goblet in a nutshell. It's a pretty simple game. So now we'll move on to the review. Okay, so Raise Your Goblets is a pretty fun game. There is some randomness to it. There is a lot of chaos where you start losing track of which goblets that have the poison, which ones you've been putting the antidotes in, which ones you put, especially if you're trying to spread it out and be more of kind of like a bluff. The fact that you get to see who your target is and who's targeting you, to me, is a really cool mechanic, because it allows you to basically want to keep an eye on the person who you're trying to poison, but also keep an eye on the person who is trying to poison you. The theme is pretty goofy. I actually really like it. I think it's fun. It's Princess Bride being one of my favorite movies. Definitely added some nostalgia to the game where we were quoting it a lot, and it kind of made me feel like it was that moment in the movie where you really can't trust any of the goblets. You're kind of wondering, is that person doing their action because they're preparing for their target, or are they doing it to screw you over, or what are you putting in your own cup? What are they putting in their own cup? So a lot of tension in the game, a lot of mystery in the game. The artwork for the character cards is pretty great, as you can see here. The goblets are really nice. They are plastic, and they have cool designs on them. The coasters are these typical circle things. They're pretty good quality. They snap on and snap off really easily, so you don't have to be afraid of damaging them. The cardboard victory points are pretty sturdy cardboard. They punched out really easily when I punched them out. The gems, I'm a little disappointed. These are plastic versus the glass gems. They're lighter, which is nice, but I like the feeling of the glass gems more than I like the feeling of these plastic gems. But the game is relatively inexpensive, so maybe that's why they went with plastic, to keep the price point lower. And since it's Cool Mini or Not, the production value is what you would expect from a Cool Mini or Not game. It is a pretty light game. It doesn't take very long to play. It's very quick to set up. It's really easy to explain the rules. I think we referenced the rules only like 2 times. The first time was during the first course, just to clarify the actions and the turn order. But once the first course was done, we were playing it without any issues at all, which is great. There's some small games that you have to refer to the manual a lot. The manual is pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy to understand. It has a description of all the families on the back, what like their house words, what the story is, and the name of the families, which is nice. It's a nice flavor text to have. I like the fact that each of these are not just colored, but they have different insignias on them as well as on the target cards. This way, if you're colorblind, you can still easily identify who your target is and which family you are and who's targeting you, which a lot of games don't take that into consideration. With that said, there's a couple of complaints of the game is that it is a little bit random. Because you are trying to poison people and people are trying to poison you, you lose track a lot of the goblets, which to me is fine in the sense that if you are in a poison showdown with other families, it is going to add suspicion and difficulty. So thematically, it worked great. But if you don't like luck in your games at all, and you don't like games where you have to keep track of things, well, that's unfortunately negative. It is a very light game, so it's not really like a heavy gamers game, which is good because it allows people to get introduced to the hobby. It's a good party game because it plays up to 12 players. It's also a great game to play with family. Yes, it's poison themed, but there's nothing too risque or revealing in the cards or the artwork, so you can play it with pretty comfortably with your family. Overall, these things, they fold really easily and stand up. The quality is really good. So they put a lot of effort in the production of this game, and the game is fun. We really had a good time playing it. Some people didn't like the randomness of it a little bit because they were trying too hard to strategize. I ended up losing by 1 victory point, even though I was winning for a round. I had the character who could remove poison from his cup, but then if you died, you got 0 victory points. Otherwise, I probably would have won. I liked the fact that the character cards are face up for the whole game. I also like the fact that the character cards are your character for the entire game, so people know your strategy. They know what you're going to be up, what you're going to probably do. It's a nice little addition to the game because it really, you have to play to the strategy of your card. For me, for example, with a poison guy, because I could remove a poison chip, I would try to put antidotes in my cup, but then if I did a pure action, I saw there was only 1 poison token in there, I would be focusing more on putting wine in so I can get more victory points, or put wine in some other player's cup, or if I saw another player trying to screw me over by putting a lot of poison in my cup, well, I knew that I didn't have to put as much antidotes because the character I was, and so I really would focus on kind of putting just a few in there, or bluffing, putting a little more poison in my cup so that the player who was going to be poisoned by me would think that I was loading my cup up with antidotes, and they ended up swapping with my cup and getting killed. So there is some awesome strategy there. Overall, I gave this game an 8 out of 10. It is a game that I definitely would play again, and I would play with the right group and play with a large number. But because it is a light game, it didn't blow me away. It wasn't like, oh my god, this is so amazing, I got to play this every time my gaming group comes over. And there is a little bit of element of luck to it, which I don't mind, but that might turn off some players. So I gave it a solid 8 out of 10. It is a good game. It is pretty fun. So we'll move on to the next segment. Welcome to Should This Belong on Your Shelf, or Is There Room on Your Shelf for this game? This is a tough one, to be honest. It's a good game. As I said, I gave it an 8 out of 10. It's good that it plays up to 12 players. It's a quick game. You can play it as a filler or in a party setting, and while you're waiting for other people to arrive. So overall, if you like simple, quick filler games that can fit up to 12 players, then yes, it would belong on your shelf. It's also very unique. There's not many games out there like it. I personally have not played any other game that was about poisoning goblets, swapping them, and these simple, fun mechanics while trying to know who your friends are and who your enemies are. But there are other games that have a similar feel to them, like Cash and Guns, which have that element of tension, have that element of fun, where you're a bunch of bank robbers sharing a pool, and then you secretly point your gun at somebody, 1, 2, 3, point, and then you're like, oh no, they're targeting me, I better drop my gun, otherwise I'm out. And so, those games are super, I really enjoy those games. They're fun, they can play with a large group, and they're exciting, and they bring tension to the table, and they bring humor and comedy, because you're laughing at, who was the person that was the jerk that pointed all the guns at you when you didn't expect it, right? While Raise Your Goblets doesn't have those elements to make it as exciting and fun as those games, it does have its own fair share of excitement and fun, like the tension of not necessarily knowing what's in your cup, or someone calls toast, you're like, oh no, I wasn't ready to toast, well, I better plan my last action accordingly. And so there is a lot of great things in this small game that I really enjoyed. If you don't care for the theme, or kind of the idea of a little bit of randomness with poisoning, there's not a whole lot of strategy really, it's more just figuring out what actions to do that are appropriate, or you won't have a group of 6 or more players to play with, then it may be worth passing on this game. It may not fit on your shelf. This is not a run out immediately and get it game. It does seem, I do like the idea of the kind of goblet roulette with less players. I also like the idea of the wine tasting with more players. But if you have a dedicated gaming group of, let's say, 4 players, you're not really going to get the whole full experience with this game. To me, this game is ideally with 6 players, because all the houses are involved, all the goblets are involved, and all the people are involved. You could easily play it with 4 to 5 players. You can play it with 2 to 3 players. It sounds like the roulette game would be pretty fun to play with the right group. And you can play with more than 6 players, because having the wine taster and a trader mechanic is really cool. It's pretty neat, not knowing if the person next to you who's supposed to be saving your butt is actually going to try to poison you. It gives you a little bit more of a feel to the theme. So it works well with the theme. It works well with the mechanics. It's fun. It's lighthearted. If that appeals to you, then yes, this belongs on your shelf. If that doesn't appeal to you, or you want something with more strategy, more complexity, or you want something with more tension and more silliness to it, like Cash and Guns or other party games, or you don't have a group of players that you typically play with that are 5 or 6 players or more, maybe you only play with 2, 3 players on average, then no, this game does not belong on your shelf. So I do overall though recommend it. If this sounded like a fun game to you, or in any way interests you, it's relatively inexpensive. Definitely go out and buy it. If anything, if you're like, nah, that doesn't seem like the right game for me, well, you're not going to miss too much, but you will miss a unique game. So I do recommend that even if you feel like this doesn't belong on your shelf, that it's not the right kind of game for your gaming group, I do recommend you check it out at a convention or a demo if there's someone running it at a game shop, or any chance you get where you go to a friend's house who does have it. Definitely recommend you give it a try, give it a chance, because it is fun, but ultimately, it just depends on the size of your gaming group and whether the theme appeals to you or not. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the review, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.